Welcome to this presentation, What is Mind Body Wellness? Brought to you by Connections Mind Body Wellness and me, Kira Markoff. We're going to start just by reviewing the disclaimer. So, the content is for informational purpose only, not designed to diagnose, treat, prevent, or cure any physical, mental, or emotional disease, issue, or condition. That was a lot of commas. Also, we're going to be talking about yoga a little bit later on, so it's always a good reminder if you're going to start a new exercise program, you should talk to a healthcare provider before you do that. So, like I said, I'm Kira Markoff. I've been a licensed social worker for the last several years now. I'm also a certified clinical trauma professional. I've completed 200 hours of yoga teacher training, and I've authored the book Mindfulness in Me, A Practical Guide for Living. Currently, I'm also working on a PhD in psychology, and my area of focus is mindfulness and romantic partner relationships. So that's just a little bit about me, kind of what I've specialized in, and it'll make sense going forward. We're just going to start by talking about a definition of wellness. So, when we talk about wellness, really what we mean is being in a state or something that has a quality of being in good health, right? And so we know that being in good health doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have any bad days, you never feel off or get a stomach ache, but it just means overall, in general, you're a functional and healthy and happy person. There aren't any major issues or concerns or things that needed treated on an ongoing basis. So that's just what wellness means. So when we talk about wellness, there are a couple different ways that we can measure that. So first is subjective measures, and those are things that people would tell to you, right? So if I say, "How do you know that you're feeling well?" You could say, "Well, I feel happy, right? Or I have more energy, or I'm able to do more of the things that I want to do. I can accomplish goals, right? I can set goals, and I have enough health and energy and well-being to motivate myself and be able to get those things done. I feel like my life has purpose. I am independent. I'm able to take care of all of my needs on my own without relying on other people." And another subjective measure is that I can accept myself, right? I'm happy with who I am. I feel content with who I am and how I feel. So those would be things that somebody might tell you in order to show you or kind of communicate to you that they're feeling well. On the other side of that, we have what's called objective measures, which means somebody is looking in and writing things down and documenting to say, yes, you are a well person or you are not a well person. So some physical markers would be disease, right? So if you have diabetes or heart disease or bipolar disorder, we could say, hey, this is something that we've documented that shows that you're not as well as you could be. Um, that the BMI, so that's the body mass index, right? Kind of height, weight, kind of thing. That's where they get like obesity from. And then ADLs, which stands for activities of daily living, right? So can I shower? Can I cook food? Can I walk around my house? Can I fold the laundry? Right? Things on a day-to-day basis that people have to do. Feed myself is another big one. Um, so those are some of those physical markers, right? I should not have any diseases. Body mass index is kind of a questionable one, but we'll kind of leave that to the side for now. And then ADLs are all things that you should be able to do or show to say like, hey, this is a well person. And then psychological markers, like I said, mental health symptoms, right? So panic attacks, self-harm, racing thoughts could be one, or just not being able to enjoy your life, not being able to connect with other people, right? All of those kinds of things that we might note. So, when we talk about the mind body wellness, really what we're saying here is that true wellness happens in connection and by acknowledging both of those two parts of self, right? We all have a mind and we all have a body. And so, um, traditionally, Western medicine has kind of siloed those, right? Like you go to your PCP, your healthcare doctor, and you go to your mental health provider or your psychiatrist, right? And it's treated two very different ways. Um, so really what this mind body movement is, it's just a realization and a recognition that your mind and your body exist in a relationship, right? And we can't focus on one to the neglect of the other. So it's an approach to wellness that's based on a belief that the mind and the body affect each other, and that in order to be really and truly well, we have to, one, acknowledge that connection, and then two, address wellness in both the mind and the body instead of picking the one that we think is more important and saying, like, oh, that one can just sit over there. We don't need to pay attention to it. And so this really is kind of new here, like in the US and stuff. We're saying, like, oh, this mind body movement, like, how fantastic and new. But actually, like, it's kind of common sense when you think about it. Like, if you realize how simple it really is, like, oh, yes, my mind and my body, are together, and like, it's important to recognize that they both affect me and my wellness. And Eastern kind of lifestyles and medicines have recognized that for a really long time, and we thought they were kind of hokey. But now we have the research, right? Because Western academia loves research that says, hey, no, this is actually true. So the best example of that in research now is stress. And we'll kind of go through like mind, body, and then kind of the brain is the best or like the most obvious connector of like mind and body because it's a body part that also kind of houses your mind. It's very interesting. I study psychology and it's still kind of baffling to me. Um, but I included this quote by John Kabat-Zinn, and he says, you can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf." And what that means is that you're always going to have stress, you're always going to have thoughts, you're always going to have worries and concerns, and you're going to have bad days. You can't stop any of those things from happening, but you can learn to interact with them in a different way so that they don't rule your life and they don't make you unwell, right? And so he was the founder of the mindfulness based stress reduction clinic, which is actually out of a university in New England. So he was one of the kind of pioneers, and this was like in the 1970s, one of the pioneers for like mindfulness based kind of medical practices, right? Because it was out of a medical center. So when we move through stress, we can see the way that the mind and the body act in relationship with one another. So I listed on here appraisals. And basically, what that means is an appraisal, it's just a fancy word for like the way that you assess something or like the story that you're telling yourself about it. So, stress is not bad, right? Stress is not inherently evil, it's not problematic. Like, the way to wellness is not living a life free of stress. The problem now is that we all live incredibly stressed out lives. So, we're stressed out more of the time, so more often, and also for longer periods of time. The way that stress is beneficial to the body is we live kind of at, baseline, what people call the rest and digest. So we're kind of going along, yay, all relaxed and calm. Stressor happens, we deal with it, and then we go along, right? And so it kind of has these like peaks and valleys, and it's only supposed to be when we're confronted with a problem where we can actually follow through with some kind of resolution, or we can fix it in some way. So for example, something stressful might be you're driving and then somebody like cuts you off, right? And so it's good to have a stress response in that situation. It makes your body more alert, you're able to respond more quickly, you're able to avoid that situation that could end in death, right? And so your body naturally kicks in all of those extra things that you need to be able to respond to save your life. Um, and then once that's over, right, you've resolved it, your body should come back down and you should be able to kind of soothe yourself and feel progressively more relaxed as time goes on, right? It's not like, oh, I solved that and like la di da, it's like it never happened, but your body kind of goes back into its normal functioning. So that's kind of how that should work. The problem is that it doesn't work that way. And so we are living with a brain that is recognizing things as stressful and problematic all the time. And either there's nothing that we can do about it, there's nothing we can do about it now. We're saying that it's way more dangerous to us than it actually is, right? And the problem is that our brain will flag things as dangerous that, quite frankly, aren't. And in mental health therapy, that's kind of one of those things that we talk about a lot. Is like, yeah, this feels dangerous and it's it's kind of putting me in a state. That's where we get like anxiety, right? It's putting me in a state where I'm like really stressed out, but the actual threat to me is nothing, right? So, and there's layers to that, but that's just kind of I guess, a little soapbox on stress. So that's where those appraisals come in, right? The brain taking in information and then making a judgment like, is this problematic or is it okay to stay relaxed, right? So that's where that comes in. And so when our brain is constantly saying, like, this is stressful, this is stressful, this is stressful, this is a challenge, right? Putting pressure on us, like, you need to fix, figure out, or solve, right? What happens is that when the brain identifies something as stressful, it sets off the HPA axis, which is the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, right? And so those are two parts of your brain, and then your adrenal glands are actually, they kind of sit like round about your kidneys. So that kind of goes through your body, and that regulates different stress hormones, um, including cortisol and adrenaline, which are two really important stress hormones. So those hormones again activate all of those different processes in your body so that you can respond to whatever that stressor is, right? That thing that's causing you stress. Um, but when it gets activated too much and for too long, then it causes a lot of wear and tear on your body, digestive issues, which is where we get things like weight gain or those like sugar and insulin problems, blood pressure and heart rate problems, right? Because both your heart is activated in the stress response, right? So if your heart is continuously under stress, it's going to get really tired, right? It's going to start to have some problems, and then also some inflammatory disorders, rheumatoid arthritis, and then some immune disorders. So they've started to see relationships in, stress and then ability to fight off infections. So that's where that immune disorders thing comes in, and then skeletal atrophy, which is like your bones and bone density, and then as well as mental health symptoms. So kind of across the whole spectrum of mental health symptoms that you could see. Mania, um, which is kind of this like elevated mood, super like feeling good about myself, really big, grandiose kind of good, um, extra good, too good, right? View of myself like I'm the best person in the world, nobody's better than me, right? And then also impulsivity, so like spending lots of money or having like risky sexual behavior. So that kind of all is in mania. And then depression, which is the exact opposite of that, right? Like super low, don't want to do anything, no interest in anything, feeling hopeless and sad. Insomnia kind of goes with both of those. And then anxiety, right? Like I'm worried, I have racing thoughts, I can't relax myself, even sometimes anxiety attacks, and anger, irritability, a bunch of other stuff gets all wrapped up in there. So you have all of that kind of happening because your body is in this state during stress where you just do not feel safe and comfortable, right? And that's really what it boils down to. Your brain's primary job is to take in information and decide what to do with it so that you are at minimum safe, right? That's its number one priority. Number one priority is always safety, and number two priority, comfort, right? So, how can I be safe and how can I be comfortable? And at some level, we start to transcend that so that we can make choices to do things that are important to us, even if we're not comfortable. But again, that is a discussion for another day. So here's kind of what we've talked about so far. Wellness is a person's ability to live a full and satisfying life. That's what we're getting at. That's our goal here. How can we get you to a place where your life feels full and satisfying for you? And the way that we do that is by recognizing that you can't just focus on mind or just focus on body. You have to recognize that true wellness comes only from having a mind and a body that both are functioning well, right? So if you have a sick body, you can't live 100% of the time in your mind, right? It just doesn't work that way. And people think that they can, and it's not a long-term solution, right? It might feel good for a little while. Um, but again, discussion for another day. So the mind-body approach is a belief that true wellness comes from addressing your mind and your body together as one unit instead of two separate silos. And then we talked about stress as the most commonly used evidence for the existence of the mind body connection and also the necessity of having a mind body approach to wellness. So let's talk about some mind body practices. First, hygiene is a really great way to care for both your mind and your body. Things like regular showers, getting good sleep, eating healthy food, and drinking water. All of those things help to make sure that your body and your brain, which is a body organ, are functioning at their best because your brain houses your mind in part. And again, this is debatable, but we're just going with it, right? So if we say that your mind kind of lives inside of your brain for the most part, if your brain is not functional, the thoughts that it's putting out and the way that you're regulating your mood are not going to be ideal, right? And that's mind, right? My thoughts and my moods, that's my mind. And so if my brain's not working and my brain kind of controls my mind, then my mind is not going to work either. So showers, make sure you're clean. Getting good sleep. I cannot overemphasize the importance of good quality sleep. Not at all. Um, the best thing that you can do for yourself is get good sleep. I firmly believe that. People will argue with me probably about that, but I'll stick to it. Eating healthy food and drinking water, right? Giving yourself the nutrients that you need in order to sustain life and be functional. Yoga, fantastic for mind and body. We'll talk more about that later. Um, Honestly, people get really focused on like the body benefits, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be super flexible and like be able to do all these things. I'm a firm believer that the mind benefits are at least equal, if not more beneficial than the body benefits that you get from yoga. Um, and if you're interested in that, feel free to check out my video coming out soon. What is yoga and why should I do it? So, more on that in another video. Running, weightlifting, traditional exercise, right? Really good for your body. Tons of research on the way that it benefits your mind. Um, and then non-traditional exercise. So dance fitness, things like Zumba, Tai Chi, Krav Maga, which is, if you don't know what that is Israeli street fighting. I knew a girl who did it once and she came in with like bruises and stuff. Anyways, she really enjoyed it. It makes them feel good and powerful. And it's exercise and it's great for body and, just overall physical health. And also, there's tons of benefits for willpower, self discipline, different parts of acceptance and empowerment, right? You learn all kinds of lessons. So, exercise in all shapes, whatever works for you. And I guess that's really kind of the core of having so many different choices is that no one option is going to work for every person. And so part of your own wellness journey might be trying out a bunch of different stuff to see what works for you and what makes you feel well, right? Obviously, I am kind of a yoga, mindfulness, meditation kind of like supporter. It doesn't mean that's going to be what works for you. I would encourage you to give it a try, but if you find that taking a walk in the park every morning does more for your wellness, then you do you. I mean, it's as simple as that. Moving on. So we have hygiene, we have exercise, stress management. So mindfulness and meditation, fantastic for stress management. Like I said, there's a mindfulness-based stress reduction clinic. So much research has come out about that and the way that mindfulness meditation just really works on multiple layers, right? So physical layers by guiding your body into a state of physical relaxation, mental layers by helping people make better appraisals, right? So better, less stressful stories about the things that are going on in their life, right? So mindfulness and meditation is really good on all of those levels. Religious activities and hobbies are also really great stress management, and then nature, which can double in the exercise if you're like, going for walks in the woods and stuff. And then last but not least, having good relationships. So a couple things I want to say about that. You have a relationship with yourself, right? So that looks like having good self-esteem, self-love, kindness, self-compassion. And then you also have relationships with other people. And it's really important to be intentional with those relationships and to make sure that you're spending time around people who make you feel good about yourself. Because If you're only spending time around people who make you feel bad about yourself, that's not going to add to your wellness. That's like drinking soda and thinking that you're drinking water, right? Like it's not going to work out for you the way that you want it to. So that's what I want to say about that. The last thing, this is kind of about stress, so I just wanted to kind of add this in here real quick. I know it's a lot of information, so um, I'm just gonna kind of hit the high points. So this is about nervous system functioning. So that is really hand in hand with our stress response. So what we're looking for is to be there in that middle area, that window of tolerance. That means that you feel safe and comfortable. You're able to complete tasks appropriately. You feel calm and peaceful. Your mind is clear and you're able to think rationally, right? So, body is calm, mind is calm, and we can get things done and respond to things in a way that makes us feel good, right? And so the two sides of that, right? If we are outside of our window of tolerance, we could be either too active, right? So our nervous system is overactive, high alert, irritable, racing thoughts, excessive goal directed activities. So, like not sleeping, doing like 6,000 things in one day, deciding to redecorate or reorganize the entire house at one time, impulsivity, and attention problems, right? So if our brain or our nervous system is hyperactive, then we get what yogis like to refer to as monkey mind, where it just kind of darts from thing to thing and it doesn't sit still, right? It just kind of runs around the room and creates chaos and nothing productive really happens and it's just, I mean, it's just a mess. Um, so I'll talk more about that in another video on trauma and trauma informed yoga. We'll talk about the window of tolerance and how trauma gets kind of either misdiagnosed as or also presents as, however you want to kind of think about that, bipolar disorder, ADHD. Um, those are kind of the big ones. And then obviously like anxiety and depression. So you see trauma kind of come out in all of those ways. Also eating disorders, funnily enough. But again, we'll talk about that in the trauma video. So the other end of that spectrum is hypoarousal, which is what you can think of as like depressive symptoms. So like feeling sluggish, sad, not really feeling interested in anything. That's what that fancy word anhedonia means. Just like, nothing really makes me feel excited or happy. Like nothing really is sparking that inner passion in me. And so what tends to happen with people a lot is that we pendulum swing from hyper to hypo, back and forth. We go from one end, one extreme to the other, and we don't spend a whole lot of time in that middle area, right? That window of tolerance. And so, what these practices of yoga, mindfulness, meditation, and some of those other mind body practices help you to do is get into your window of tolerance and stay there. So you're training your body, you're teaching your body how to come into this window of tolerance, this middle area, this peaceful, clear place, and to stay there. And the more often you come there and the longer you stay there, the bigger that window gets and the easier it is for you to get there and stay there. So that's part of why we do some of these practices also. So where does mental health therapy fit in here? And honestly, the answer is it depends on the therapist. So if you see me, I'm a mental health therapist. I see clients, individual. I have some couples, do groups, right? Like all of the things. And I come from a mind body kind of background, and so I bring that into the therapy, right? I come from that modality, and so I weave that in. We do relaxations, we do like body awareness during the therapy. Like that's just something I bring into it because that's who I am. And therapists are people just like regular people. Like we're all different. If you walk into a room with 60 therapists, you're going to get 60 different personalities with 60 different styles. And not all of them are going to work for you. And that's totally fine, right? And so it's just like the mind body practices we talked about earlier. You don't have to find a mind body therapist in order to get good mental health therapy. You just have to find a therapist that works for you and gets you where you need to be, or at least you feel comfortable and you feel like it's working for you, right? So mental health therapy can be mind body if your therapist kind of comes from that and uses those kinds of techniques, or it can just be mind, and that's okay too if that's what you need and that's what works for you. But not all mental health therapy is mind body, and that's okay. Just something to kind of think about and recognize. So I liked this little this little infographic because it just kind of puts everything that we've talked about so far into a nice little visual. So if we're kind of walking down this road towards wellness, we have personal hygiene, sleep, 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 nutrients and cleanliness, and then stress management, right? We live in a world full of stressors, right? People, notifications, work, traffic, like it's all around us, right? So we really have to have a good way to manage those. Moving on, kind of walking along this road, supportive relationships, mental health therapy, if you need it and it works for you. Um, Honestly, if you haven't tried it and you're feeling like it might be beneficial, what is the harm? Seriously, what is the worst that could possibly happen? You go, you have one session, you hate it, you never go back, right? Or you go and you love it. Or you go, you don't like that therapist, and you're like, hey, but I might like a different therapist. All of those are fine options. Anyways, um, moving along, non-sleep rest. So this is a big thing that's coming out. Essentially, it's kind of like meditation, but different. Um, so non-sleep rest is when your body is in a state of really deep relaxation, but you're still consciously aware. There's this yoga practice, it's called Yoga Nidra, which is yogic sleep, and it's a guided meditation practice where you are in this state. It's like a limbo state between awake and asleep, and the teaching is that 1 hour of yoga nidra is equal to 4 hours of regular sleep. So there's a lot of research coming out about the benefits of non-sleep rest and how it can even be more restorative for you than just taking a nap, right? So doing 30 minutes of non-sleep rest could be more restful for you than taking a 30-minute nap. So just something to kind of consider and know that that's out there. And then number six is having productive and fulfilling activities. You are a person, and the whole reason to be well is so that you can do the things that you want to do, right? So that you can have good relationships, so that you can achieve your goals, so that you can feel like your life has meaning and purpose, right? That's why we're doing all of this. So, just a couple notes on yoga, meditation, and mindfulness, how they fit in here. So, yoga is usually talked about primarily as physical fitness, strength, flexibility, but there's also this really, really strong mind body connection here because we talk about empowerment and feeling safe and comfortable in your own body and learning to listen to your body and just having good interactions, right? Building a good relationship with your body. So many of us do not have good relationships with our bodies. I'm not this enough. I'm not that enough. My this always hurts. My that doesn't work the way that it should, right? Like yoga is beautiful in that yoga literally means connection, right? It's about forming a union between breath and movement, between mind and body, between me and my higher power, right? That's what yoga is for. And again, more on that in my What is Yoga and Why Should I Try It video. Meditation is all about rewiring the brain for relaxation, having extended periods for clarity, rest, and intention, and also preparing yourself to be able to respond differently to things in the moment. Um, so, a meditation can be anywhere from 5 minutes to an hour or longer. It doesn't need to be super long. Between It depends if you're doing a guided meditation or you're just kind of sitting and breathing. So it depends on the kind of meditation that you're doing. But really, anything between 10 and 30 minutes would be fantastic for a daily practice if that's something that you're kind of looking into. But again, make choices for you and do what works and explore different stuff. And mindfulness is kind of where rubber meets the road, right? So meditation are these extended periods where I go off, I have a quiet, calm space, and I'm sitting. Mindfulness is I'm washing my hands and I'm able to be in the moment and I'm able to be with my body and feel all of those sensations of washing my hands. Or I'm able to be in a conversation and really remember to listen deeply and with compassion. Or I'm able to be with somebody who's really angry and not get defensive myself and not take it personally. Right? So mindfulness is an everyday practice. It's kind of like what we're shooting for in meditation, but actually kind of taking it into real life where it works for us. There are benefits to both practices. So, again, meditation is kind of off alone, kind of restorative for myself, preparing my brain and my mind for all of these things. And then mindfulness is like, hey, I'm actually doing things out in the world and I'm doing them in a different way. And more on that in a mindfulness video to come. So, if you are interested in learning more, watching more videos, taking a yoga class, or listening to guided relaxations and meditations, visit me at Connections Mind Body Wellness at connectionsmindbody.com, or you can email me all of that information right here. It was so lovely talking with you. Thanks so much. Take care.